There was a rumor for a hot minute today that Mike Huckabee, the former governor of Arkansas and Fox TV host, was maybe going to think about running possibly for president again. The internet got very, very excited about the Huckabee prospect. The rumor has now been pretty definitively shot down by the Huckabee camp. An official with his political action committee telling NBC, quote, "There is no truth to the rumors that Mike Huckabee is reconsidering a run for president." But don't despair. Rumors are still fun. Rumors are still happening. For example, the Chris Christie might maybe someday think about running for president, even though he keeps saying he's not to. Rumors came back from the dead today. Hooray. The Star-Ledger in New Jersey reporting today that despite all firm evidence to the contrary, Governor Christie is seriously considering running for president in 2012. Still, an anonymous source, naturally, close to the governor, naturally, telling the Ledger that in the last week, Mr. Christie has been swayed from his earlier refusals to run by an aggressive draft Christie effort from a cadre of Republicans and donors unhappy with the existing GOP field. Now, it is impossible to say whether or not the Republican field is actually going to get any bigger. I mean, as far as Chris Christie goes, there's no reason to put any more faith in this current round of excited rumors about him than any of the previous rounds of excited rumors about him. But the excited rumors themselves are evidence of something. They are evidence of just how unhappy Republicans are right now with their options. The Mike Huckabee rumor, for example, started with a report in Reuters that begins like this: Mike Huckabee has been approached by conservative activists unhappy with the current crop of Republican and presidential hopefuls, sources tell Reuters. Conservative activists not happy with their choices? I think that means you, Rick Perry. Maybe they have caught up with 10 things about Rick Perry that may worry some conservatives, a piece the Houston Chronicle posted recently. As for Chris Christie, the rumors that he might maybe someday decide to run, even though he said he won't 1,000 times, those rumors seem to keep cropping back up because of the establishment Republican Party's effort to draft him. He's got Nancy Reagan reportedly telling him to run, Barbara Bush calling his wife and telling her that she should tell him to run, George Pataki going public with his effort to convince Chris Christie to run. It's as if the Republican Party, which, by the way, has a full complement of well-known and accomplished candidates to choose from, it's as if the Republican Party is still waiting for the real race to begin. They're waiting for better options to show up. A major Republican donor telling the New York Times this week, quote, "There is enough chatter and phone calls and static, whatever you call it in the spy business, that everyone is just sitting around. There is no confusion among the main donors. No one has signed up with either major campaign in the last 3 weeks." That would be you, Mitt Romney, and you, Rick Perry. Nobody is signing up with you because they're waiting for something better to come along because they don't think you're good enough. The Republican establishment is not happy, and the conservative establishment is not happy. They are so unhappy, they are still trying to draft new candidates to run against each other. The Republicans are still trying to find both an establishment candidate who's not Mitt Romney and a non-establishment candidate who's not Rick Perry. The party is still churning, in other words. Eventually, it is going to have to come together behind one candidate. The party establishment and the conservatives are going to have to agree on someone. And it will happen one way or another, because as the saying goes, Democrats fall in love and Republicans fall in line. But who are they going to fall in line behind? And how are they going to come to agreement about who it's going to be? One of the ways that will happen is through events like this one coming up next weekend in Washington, the Values Voter Summit. As you can see, most of the major Republican candidates are going to be there, and not just the really fringy right-wing ones. Mitt Romney is going to be there this year. He has spoken at the event in years past. This year, if you check out the schedule, you'll see Mitt Romney scheduled to speak on Saturday, right before a man named Brian Fisher. Brian Fisher. Remember our old pal, Brian Fisher?
We should not allow Muslims to serve in the U.S. military, and we have got to raise questions about whether we can afford to allow Muslims to immigrate into the United States at all. President Barack Obama nurtures this hatred for the United States of America, and I believe nurtures a hatred for the white man. I do question the patriotism of groups like Planned Parenthood. They are subverting morality. Liberals in the United States of America hate the Declaration of Independence. Counterfeit religions, alternative religions to Christianity, have no First Amendment right to the free exercise of religion. Permits, in my judgment, should not be granted to build even one more mosque in the United States of America, not one.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to have to choose as a nation between the homosexual agenda
and freedom, because the two cannot coexist.
That last bit about the homosexual agenda being at odds with freedom, that came from Brian Fisher's speech at last year's Values Voter Summit. This year's scheduled lineup, again, lists Mitt Romney, followed immediately by Brian Fisher. And that is particularly awkward this year because not only has Brian Fisher managed to be outlandishly all-caps bigoted against every other group in America that you can think of, but as the folks at Right Wing Watch have been pointing out recently, Brian Fisher is really specifically bigoted against the Mormon Church and against Mormons. Brian Fisher has said the First Amendment should not apply to Mormons. He does not believe that Mormons should have the freedom to practice their religion or to speak about it freely in America. And Brian Fisher is scheduled to speak right after Mitt Romney, who is a mainstream Republican presidential candidate, also a Mormon. Author Frank Schaeffer is a predecessor of the self-described values voters. His father was a seminal figure of the Christian conservative movement of the 1970s and the 1980s. It would not exist in the way it does today if Francis Schaeffer had not made it so. Frank Schaeffer grew up in that milieu. He himself was an evangelical Republican in those days and worked with his father. Frank parted ways with the religious right more than 20 years ago. But as regards events like the Values Voter Summit and the proximity of presidential frontrunners in the Republican Party to people like Brian Fisher, Frank Schaeffer knows of what he speaks. Frank Schaeffer joins us next.